Hey guys, how are you all doing? It's Ken back at you again. Today I'm bringing you an answer to a question I get asked quite a bit, and that is essentially, what are the differences between the USA, Japanese and Mexican Charvels? And what sort of, not necessarily what makes them better than the other, but what are the differences and what to look out for. Let's go. Right, okay, so let's take a little look at the American Charvels. Obviously, Charvel came back essentially in 2008 and 2009 with the SoCal, the San Dimas, and the San Dimas Style 2, like the one I'm holding here in candy purple. This one is from batch 3. What if you don't know what the batches are, it was essentially where the colours of the stock changed every like 3 or 4 months. And they'd come out with really cool flash colours like Taxi Cab Yellow, Seasick I believe was a colour, obviously Candy Purple, Candy Plum, millions of different colours, and they really got that nailed. And of course, obviously they brought out a nice spec for the ultimate like performance, obviously compound radius neck. You had the original Floyd Rose, the Korean made ones, JBM 59, and everything you need to have just the best rock gig of your life. You can argue, were they better than the Japanese? Right, okay, so production obviously moved to Japan in early 2010. They dropped the Style 2, one assumes it was unpopular, but they kept the SoCal and the San Dimas going. And people tend to argue, were the USA guitars better than the Japanese? I'd say no, and here's why. What happened was, when obviously they moved production over, they came out in limited colours, which is by the by, but they spent loads, the Japanese I mean, they spent loads of time and attention to detail on little things, which was really, really great. Like, they really took pride in their work. Like, they obviously filled in the fret ends, which was really cool. They also individually rolled on the earlier models. This black SoCal I'm holding here was among the first 300 made, and it's got individually rolled. I'll bring up some pictures. Fingerboard edges to the point where it's almost scalloped. It's done to almost like the nth degree, which was something that was not seen on the USA guitars. It was just not there, and it is a noticeable difference when you're playing. Also, the guitars were priced lower when they came out. They came with an SKB hard case, which the American guitars did not. And like the tonal quality was awesome, and also they were exactly the same as the USA guitars on paper. So that's where I stand. You got a hard case, the same spec, with extra attention to detail in their work. Okay, so I'm holding my Candy Blue Sandemus made in Japan. What's interesting with these guitars, this is obviously a later guitar than the Black SoCal I just showed you. This one's numbered into the 800s, and what's interesting with this, there were some subtle differences. One assumes when demand increased for the new Charvels, the Japanese Charvels being back then, they dropped Ferrari Red and released two more colours, that being Candy Blue and Candy Red, and they wanted, well, if demand increased, they couldn't afford to spend all this time with finer details like rolled fingerboard edges and stuff. Like if I brought up the pictures of this guitar, the fingerboard edges are nowhere near as rolled as they were on the SoCals, and what's really strange is this is the first guitar the first Charvel that I owned, and one thing that was kind of surprising was the colour of the finish on the neck, because there's way less finish, noticeably less when you play it, less finish on the back of the neck, but also was the colour of it. It was like a, like take the SoCal, which is quite conventional in the sense, it's the same sort of colour as any other hard rock guitar, but then it was noticeably different on the later Japanese models. It was like an eggy, omelette-y yellow. It was really strange, and I don't know how well it will show up on camera here, but obviously you can see where I've played the guitar all around. And then if you look down here into the 22nd fret low E string area, it's untouched, it's bright yellow, and then you've got obviously way paler, more back to how it should be. Here, it was no problem, it fades, but it was no problem. Also, another thing too, looking down at it, just remembered, the pickups on the Japanese models, the Sandemuses I'm referring to here, were screwed directly into the body, as opposed to suspended on bezels. This is just some strange sort of Eddie Van Halen myth here. If you screw a pickup directly into the body, it has a more resonant quality for some reason. I'm sitting on the fence, apparently that's true. But I don't mind, they all sound great, and it's got a serious barking quality to it, the Japanese models. One cool thing I didn't mention about the Japanese guitars is they extended the wildcard range, and if you don't know what the wildcard range is, it's essentially alongside the Pro Mod guitars they'd release a limited edition guitar of one style or one colour, and you had really cool variations. Like there was one called the Dead Calm Aqua guitar, which was like a blue quilt top. You had the Molten Crust Burst, which is a variation on the same theme with the quilt top. Wildcard 6, which was the Dreamsicle, which was in Candy Tangerine and was very much of Jakey Lee inspired appearances. And the Primer Scream, they went on for ages, and they were really cool guitars. And if you should ever see one, snap them up because they're amazing. We used to own two of them. We had the Wildcard 6, which is the Candy Tangerine one, I'll bring a picture up of that, and the Primer Scream, which was a really strange sort of matte grey. What was interesting, I think that was a guitar they released, it was essentially undercoat, and it was made to be painted on. But one thing that was really weird on that, not weird in a bad way, it was just different, it was just, it had yellow fret inlays, yellow dots, which is really weird. If I had one now, I'd probably paint it purple or something. Like that, literally just to go with it, then you could look like you're playing a guitar that's modelled on the twirl candy wrapper. But you know, so it's just hey, just one of those random wild cards you throw out at a gig. Anyway, there we go. Sorry. So, out of nowhere, production in Japan suddenly ceased in summer of 2011. It seems to tie in. I read apparently somewhere that the factory went bust or had some serious problems, and it seems to coincide with the really terrible tsunami. You remember the really terrible tsunami that happened in Japan? And not only did Charvels disappear for about a year, but that particular factory in Japan was home to a load of other Fender specialist brand guitars. For instance, EVH, like they were making the Wolfgang Specials, and the fully off the Fender pawn shop guitars. Do you remember them? Like they were literally just the sexiest Fender guitars forever, like ever, and they should have just carried on making them. Anyway, Charvel after that disappeared for about a year. Charvel, whilst the Pro Mods had disappeared, they were making the Desolation and Pro Stock guitars, and they were making them for probably about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, but there was a year where Pro Mods didn't exist, and then they came back in early 2013 with a new range of guitars. So obviously the SoCal and the Sandemus were back in full swing, very similar specifications, but there were some evident quality control issues, which were more obvious on the SoCals. If you took a look at one of the early Mexican SoCals, they had Charvel might have actually changed the pick guard material to a cheaper form of plastic, because obviously when they were making it, you will see it if you look in the light. Depending on which angle you're looking at it, you'll see that when they actually screwed in the pick guard, they did it too tight, so the material would flex and it'd leave really evident dints. It looked really, really weird. And also the backs of the necks, if you look at the back of some of the fretboards, they had huge sort of like brown blotches where the wood was not 100% perfect. And also another thing too that was, this is subjective, but they had some slightly less appealing colours, like some sunbursts and things that don't really float my boat. But nevertheless, they still functioned as great rock guitars, but there was some evident quality control issues there. But Charvel really did get their act together in Mexico, which is something that cannot be overlooked. And they brought out these two guitars. These were limited run guitars. Obviously you got the superstock Sandemus here and the superstock SoCal. Both in metal flake finishes, this one in sunset orange and this one in silver metal flake. And what was really brilliant with these guitars is that the sort of love and passion and soul that was lost in the early production models came back with these guitars. They were really well put together and very much akin to USA/Japanese standards in terms of guitars. And there were some awesome little sort of spec differences too. Like these have got original Floyd Roses in, the Korean made Floyd Roses that is, that are just as good as the German ones. Seymour Duncan JB and 59s, which is pretty consistent as far as Sandemus standards go. But then with the SoCal you had the JB and 59 as well, which was against tradition because obviously the Japanese ones and the American ones had DiMarzio, Tone Zone and Evolutions in, and the Superstock SoCal is the only one, the only SoCal where you can get a JB and a 59. And also, speaking of playability of these guitars, much higher standard, but out of all of the Charvels I own, well, looking around me there's a good 6 Charvels in here. The best Charvel to play that I own is this one, the SoCal. There's an amazing sort of looseness and shape to the neck. It's a thinner neck as well. It might just be this individual guitar, but it's almost as thin as, like, not the same shape, but it's almost as thin as like an RG. It's the way it feels in your hands. And another cool thing too is that with this guitar, don't know how obvious it'll show at a distance, but it's got a serious piece of rosewood on here, a really thick slab of rosewood, which you probably won't see anymore thanks to the horrible CITES law that was just introduced But you have two brilliant guitars here that came from Mexico, and this tradition of high quality in Mexico was to be extended. Okay, fast forward. It's now 2016, winter, and Charvel are re-evolving the Pro Mod range again. And what they came out with were these fine beasts with the wackiest colour palette ever, all the neon colours and all the crazy blues, pinks, reds, yellows, you name it. But with some very interesting blends and interesting sort of brand influences going on. We have the graphite reinforcement rods, which was a feature taken from the Guthrie Governor model, basically to increase climate tolerance. We have the thumb wheel truss rod adjuster, a feature that was really useful on the EVH branded guitars. We have a really nice smooth finish neck, which was not seen on some of the Mexican and Japanese models, fully enough. And there are some other sort of DNA from previous guitars going on. So you have the pickup screw directly into the body, which was a Japanese feature, which they brought back for the resin quality. We have the 6-pack of sound, which is amazing. You have a push-pull pot, where basically you can toggle between different sounds. You're essentially getting two guitars in one. And you have a tone knob, which was always handy. And they're just brilliant. What can I say? They're just incredible guitars. There was a new neck profile too, which is a little wider. It's the same shape, essentially, in your hands, but it's just a little wider. There's no problem, seriously. If you pick one up, it's barely noticeable. A lot of people get picky with this, but fully enough, the San Dimas guitars of the Pro Mod ranges, they have FRT 1000s, whereas the SoCals have FRT 2000s. And I'm not going to argue which one is better. They're still perfectly functional Floyd Roses, but the one that has been deemed better is the FRT 1000, and I agree. It's just a really smooth tuning experience, and it's as close to the original as you get before you start venturing into Schaller and German-made Floyd Rose territory. But otherwise, brilliant guitars. It actually says in the Charvel brochure that the Floyd Roses are different on the newer guitars, and they're just absolutely fantastic. Really nice. It's a perfect all-round combination of everything that made Charvel great over the years, especially since they resurrected them in the late noughties with the USA models. And also, one thing as well, my sort of concluding line before I drop the mic here, is that if you're going to buy a Charvel nowadays, you don't need to fork out tons and tons of money for a custom shop guitar unless that really is what you want. But the best overall value guitar, the Mexicans, you've got all the quality you could ever need. It's a very similar spec to the custom shops in general in terms of tone woods and everything else. But the really important things is obviously you've got extra features, the 6-pack of sound. Also, the truss rod adjustment. If you're a touring musician, you know that with the old Charvels, you had to take the neck off to adjust it, which was a real pain in the ass. And you know what I'm saying? It's just a way better value guitar for what you get, and you don't need to spend all that money. You could buy three at a pinch of these for one custom shop. So there you go. That's been my Charvel evolution wrap between the USA, Japanese and the Mexican. Dog interruption there. Basically, that's how the Charvels have evolved. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you've liked what you've seen. I hope this has cleared a few things up about the Charvel guitars and sort of dispelled a few myths and rumours, but nevertheless, thanks very much again. Please like and subscribe, and I shall see you again in the next video. Bye bye.